Well, hello. You know what? When we're getting into fall, it kind of just comes into my excitement. I feel like once I'm in the kitchen more, which in the fall I am, we have earlier evenings coming when it gets darker and cooler, and I'm just inside more, able to make more food that I love. And this is all about great fall flavors, using what I'm harvesting, but also making things that you can be versatile. You can make this for a dinner, for a brunch, for a lunch. It's a strata, and that's what I love. So pretty much it's like an egg casserole with bread, but it has so many of the seasons things in it. I went out and just now harvested some beautiful Swiss chard. We're gonna use that, and we're gonna use delicata squash and bacon. So to start, I wanna take my delicata squash. I love delicata. It's pretty thin skinned, so you eat the skin, because once you would peel the skin, you actually wouldn't have a lot of squash left. So you wanna cut it in half lengthwise after you cut off that stem end, and you just expose all the inside. It has more of a peachy colored flesh than a butternut, but then you wanna take out all the seeds, just like you would on a butternut. And I think you're gonna see when you go to take seeds out, it's even more soft than a butternut is. So where a butternut, when you go and harvest it, you have to make sure to cure it so its sugars really condense and it really is more ready to eat. Delicata is usually ready, like straight from the field. So it's one of the first you find in the fall, whether you're at farmers markets or stores, or if you grow your own. So I'm always really excited to use it because I think it's one of the more pretty ones too, because you have that gorgeous skin color and you've got all the variation of colors on it and that beautiful inside. So I'm gonna slice this up. And you know what, for delicata, you just slice it up kind of in easy bite-sized pieces. And since this is a strata, it's almost kind of, I don't know, I think it gives it a rustic quality to the strata that I really kind of just, I like it. So when you're thinking of it in a strata, if you want, and you wanna make it more bite-sized, you can totally do that. I'm someone that likes, I like variation, I like options. So I'll cut some of mine like that, like maybe half of the whole delicata, and the other half I'll leave in a little bit bigger pieces. I just think it's kind of nice to have those variations in amongst the bread and the egg and the bacon. I know, it sounds good, doesn't it? So once I get all this chopped up, which you can see goes pretty quickly. The hardest part is cutting it in half, just to make sure you have a sharp knife and you do it carefully. So I'm putting it right onto a parchment lined roasting sheet. I'm gonna take some olive oil, drizzle it over it, and we're just gonna spread it out into an even layer. You just wanna make sure when you're roasting something, when it's somewhat cut the same depth or same size, and then you put it into an even layer, you have more of an ability that it roasts at kind of an even rate. So we wanna make sure to salt it well, because this is where we're really gonna season it. And this way we're adding seasoning to every layer of what we're cooking. What we cook on the stove top, what we cook in the oven, it's all getting seasoned. So we're gonna add some fresh black pepper. Kind of just sprinkle it right around, and we're gonna put this in the oven. And while this is roasting, we're going to saute the chard, onion, bacon. It's all gonna come together. It's delicious. While the delicata is roasting, we can get ready all the aromatics and all the flavor that's going into this. And it's gonna start with some bacon. So I wanna cook my bacon and I wanna reserve the oil that's gonna come off it while it's cooking, the grease from it. And that's what we're gonna cook and really saute the onion in and the Swiss chard once we chop it all up. So I'm gonna start by just browning and getting my bacon ready to go. So I'm gonna lay it all out in the skillet, and I'm doing it like this in a skillet because I want to save that fat from the bacon. That's really gonna help flavor it. So I'm gonna lay these in here, we're gonna flip them. When we take them off, we'll add the onion, the Swiss chard, some match made in heaven. I just pulled all the bacon off. I did it in 2 batches. You can see it's gonna get nice and crispy, but we have a lot of reserved oil, and really more than we wanna have. So I'm gonna pour off all that oil, because you don't need all that. But I don't mind all the bacon bits on the bottom, because that's actually a lot of flavor. I'm gonna wipe my skillet there, a little bit of drips. And then I just wanna take some reserved, just like we would if it was olive oil or butter, add a little bit back. And it still has a lot of residual heat in it too. So to this I'm gonna add, and we're gonna saute, I have some onion chopped up, which, see, it instantly, we'll take it back to the stove, but the heat is still there. And then I have all the stems from the Swiss chard. Now I always get a lot of questions, how do you eat Swiss chard? Because I love growing it. Sometimes different parts of the world, it's also called silver beet. When I pick it, when you buy it in the store in a bunch, I take it, and sometimes you have to turn the leaf to me inside out. But when you expose that stem, I just like to cut along it, take it off the stem, because this is more, toothsome. It has more fiber to it. So you wanna take these stem pieces and just chop them up smaller, and then we're gonna saute them with the onion, and they're gonna be tender and softened, and still they'll have this great kind of sweetness and flavor to them. So I'm gonna add it there with the onion. We're gonna take this back to the stove, kind of saute it in all of that beautiful bacon grease, which, I mean, we all know how good a flavor that's gonna have. So even though the bacon grease has a little bit of salt, I'm gonna add a little bit more salt just to kind of get it going, a little bit of pepper. We're gonna let this saute until softened, and then we're gonna add in all the green leaves from the Swiss chard and let those wilt down too. The Swiss chard and the onion is pretty much softened now, so I'm gonna just roll up all the leaves from the Swiss chard that I saved, and we're just chopping up somewhat finely. So Swiss chard, when you're using the leaves, is a lot like a spinach. Obviously it's gonna cook way down. Right now, you're kind of like, looks like a lot of Swiss chard. But once we actually chop it up, and then we're gonna just kind of cook it in all that beautiful onion and stem and bacon deliciousness, it's gonna really soften and it's gonna really cook down. So we wanna get all this extra liquid out of it, otherwise the strata would be watery. So we're gonna add this on top. We're gonna slowly let it just soften, wilt in, and cook down, along with all those stems and the onion. And while it's doing that, we're gonna get the actual milk and egg mixture ready for the strata. So we have all the components here for the strata. Delicata is finishing up, that Swiss chard onion mixture is finishing up, the bacon is ready. So we really wanna get our eggs and milk ready. So we're gonna start with some whole milk. I like the whole milk because it has a richness to it. It has more flavor to it. And then we're gonna cut it with some, not cut it really, but with some heavy cream. Now the heavy cream, if you did all of it, would be a little burdened, but I think doing it this way as opposed to just using half and half, you know the product called half and half, I think this actually adds more flavor. So to this I'm gonna add in eggs. So really what we're doing is kind of making, it's not a white sauce at all, but you're using this milk and cream mixture and you're making what's really gonna be almost like a custard base for this casserole. So I think of it as like an elevated egg casserole. I think it has a little bit more flavor to it. I think it has more components to it that you want. You know, just kind of like, it has an elevation to it that I think you really enjoy. What is great about this is, there's a soaking time that's needed. You can do it for as little as an hour, or you can do it for as much as overnight if you want to. So if you want, and let's say with the holidays coming up, you want something great to have on Thanksgiving morning, on Christmas morning, you can do the strata and you can actually just then put it together the morning of. And I think you can, get it out of the fridge, having had made it the night before, have let it sit in the fridge overnight, and that's kind of what's perfect. So I'm gonna whisk in and make sure all those eggs are broken up. We just wanna make sure with that milk, with the cream, which at first you're thinking, that's quite a bit of milk, it's quite a bit of cream, and it's quite a bit of eggs. But what we have is all that bread that's gonna soak up this really custard mixture. So we wanna make sure that we have enough of it so it doesn't get dry, because you wanna have that egginess to it. So look at how the color has changed. You're getting a cream from all that yolk, which when you use a good farm-raised egg, you get a deeper yolk color. So that's why you're getting that wonderful kind of orange hue to it. So to this, I wanna start adding some more seasonings. So we're gonna add some pepper. We're gonna add some salt, because you wanna season every layer that you're cooking. And there's a lot of egg mixture in here, so it takes a decent amount of salt. We're also gonna add just a little bit Dijon mustard. The kind of funky tanginess that Dijon mustard has, it's not a lot. You're never gonna notice there's mustard in here, but it kind of adds something that's needed. And then a little bit of nutmeg. Now I always use fresh nutmeg, and I think most custard mixtures, or just kind of like a cream sauce mixture, really benefit from some nutmeg. It really flavors the dish, but you don't want so much that it overburdens it. So now that that's mixed up, we can keep it there and talk about bread. So I love to use a challah. You can use any bread, honestly, for this. And I like to make it so the cubes, they have a good size to them, so I cut it kind of thick, maybe inch-sized slices. And then to those slices, I'm gonna cut them into cubes, just kind of nice big cubes, because I like it to know, I like when I have something to not really hide any ingredients, and I don't want it to just go into the background. I want each one to kind of come through. So you can see what I'm doing is really just chopping this into nice big cubes. So I'm gonna finish chopping this up. We're gonna get all cleaned up, the components together, put this together, and let it soak. I have all the components laid out. So this is just kind of like an assembly. We have the bread. I'm gonna start with that. Now you can use day-old bread, or if you have bread that needs to be used up, that's a great thing. I don't need to dry out the bread for this, but you can use what you have. So look at all that beauty in there. We're gonna add our roasted squash. And if you pull the squash out and think, ooh, at first it doesn't look roasted, turn it over and you get this beautiful color. So what I like about kind of dry assembling it at first, it kind of gives you that opportunity to say, okay, where do I want it all? Not that you have to sit here and nitpick each one, although my grandma would have, and that's probably where I get it from. But you can make sure you kind of evenly put some of these ingredients around, and that's what I like. Kind of some of them down, some of them up. And we're gonna take our Swiss chard mixture. I'm gonna start by kind of just spooning it over. We're gonna kind of get it into all those little nooks and crannies, and then we'll come through and make sure it's actually going down into the egg casserole or strata. You can really use it interchangeably. It's just that for technical terms, it's a strata, which egg casserole is more of a general term. So once we have that, I wanna make sure that I kind of, you know, get all that kind of down in the bread too. You don't want it all just to sit on top. But if you would mix all this together in a bowl, you would still have it really uneven because a lot of the greens would just go to the bottom of the bowl, the bread would sit on top. So instead I like to do it like this, and you can kind of look through. I like to have little bits and pieces of the squash poking out, so once it gets baked, you see them, because I want everyone to know that this is a fall dish. I'm gonna take the bacon, I've chopped it up. I know, yeah, it's a lot of bacon, but this is a big casserole. So you can serve a crowd, you could make it, you could, you know, eat on it for a while during the week. Your family could have multiple meals from it, and that's what I like. We're gonna take the cheese, most of the cheese. So we have the shredded Gouda. I just shredded it up. You could buy it pre-shredded, but I never like to do that because it kind of has that coating on it, and there's something about that that's gross. So at first, when I have it all on here, it's pretty full, but as this mixture soaks in, it will really kind of condense. So we're gonna let this kind of fill in all those nooks, all those crannies. We want all that bread to really soak it in. And that's why once I have all this egg mixture on here, if I want to serve it today, I'm gonna let it sit for an hour so the bread can really soak in the egg mixture, because otherwise you get these pockets of just like cooked egg and dry bread. But if you allow it to really sit with the bread, you're gonna let the bread really soak it in, and then you get this custardy bread that has a lot of that goodness in it. So that's why I'm kind of being careful and making sure even the pieces of bread that are kind of sticking out, yeah, we're getting it all over. And it's gonna look kind of full at first, but then you're gonna notice that the bread is gonna continue to soak up all of that good custard. So I'm gonna top it with just this little bit of remaining shredded cheese, just to make sure you get some of that goodness on top. I'm gonna let this sit for an hour. Now I'm gonna put it in to bake. And you can kind of press it if you need to and make sure, because once you press it, you see that there's that liquid still in there. So that will mostly be gone when you go to cook it. So I'm gonna let this sit for an hour. We're gonna bake it, and then you are gonna see a beautiful fall strata. Look at this beauty. This is what I love about a strata or an egg casserole. They are festive, they are homey, they are humble, and yet they're beautiful. There's something amazing about a good looking casserole. Yeah, we can call it a casserole. It doesn't need to have a bad name. So I pulled it out of the oven. It's still pretty hot, but yeah, I am going to. And I think these are best served pretty fresh from the oven. You wanna let them cool slightly maybe, but they're kind of like a souffle where they can kind of fall. So you wanna take it and look at that. Look at all the pieces. And I know, I leave some big pieces, but I like that. I like seeing the delicata. I like seeing the bread. I like the pieces that come out and get kind of a little charred and a little browned. Man, it's like, where do you start? What I'm excited about is the Swiss chard, is the delicata. Oh, that's good. I love anything that brings you to the time of year it is, to the season it is. This isn't just a run-of-the-mill egg casserole or strata. This is one that encompasses what we are having right now. Great in-season squash, wonderful, like delicious Swiss chard, which is more like a spinach once it's cooked like this. And you get the wonderful eggy custardness from it, that great bread soaked it up. The bacon, of course, I mean, it's a winner. You can't, everyone's gonna love it then. This is just a great strata. It's great to have on a weekend. It's great to have on an evening if you want a meal. It's also great to have around the holidays if you want a great thing for people to wake up to. Make it the night before, bake it the next day. It's perfect. I hope you make it, I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you feel loved with it, because that is the point of good food. So share this video around, because yeah, it helps me, but it helps everyone see that it's possible to make great food that can feed a crowd or fill up your family at home and enjoy it. Check my website, wiseguy.com, for this recipe, for all my other recipes, because they're all on there. They can be printed off, used again and again. This is a keeper. I hope you enjoy it. I know I'm going to.